Hi, I wanted to go over the warm-up problems one more time, do step by step, and make them more easy by showing you how to do them. So the first question was, write an equation for the line that passes through the point 6, negative 12, and the other point 15, negative 3. So that's question number 1. They gave you 2 points. This is the first point in parentheses, second point, second parentheses, and they're asking to find an equation for the line that passes through them. So when you see something like that, the first thing you need to do is you need to find the slope. Okay, so if we remember the formula for the slope, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and we use the letter m to represent the slope. Okay, so the y values are the second ones over here, so negative 12 and negative 3. It doesn't matter which one you subtract from the other, but what matters is you have to be consistent. So if I say this is y2, then in the same point this is x2. If I say that negative 12 is y1, then in the same point this is x1. So what you can't do is you say this is x1 and this is y2. The numbers need to be the same, x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so it doesn't matter which point you call it 1 and which point you call it 2, but you have to be consistent. So you can't use this as y2 minus y1 and then come here and use this as x2. Because you said y2 is negative 12, then x2 needs to be 6. So you have to be very consistent. Okay, so if we call them x1, y1, x2, y2, I think that will help. Doesn't matter again which one is 1 and which one is 2, as long as it's the same point. So by plugging it in, y2 is negative 3 minus y1, which is negative 12, over x2, 15, minus x1, 6. So again, be consistent. You can't do negative 3 minus negative 12. You say this is 2 and this is 1, and then you do 6 minus 15. Now you're doing 1 minus 2. Okay, so you have to be consistent. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now if I decided to say this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2, it's fine. You'll get the same exact answer. Make sure you do it correctly. Okay, so if I work with that, negative times a negative make a positive, so it's really that 2 negatives over here is just a positive. Oh. So negative 3 plus 12. Okay, let's work it out. So we get 9 over 9, which is equals to 1. Okay, the second step is you need to find the y-intercept. There are 2 ways to do that. Let's show one way of them. Now the first way is to use y equals mx plus b, and what we're looking for over here is b. I'm trying to find b. That's my goal. I'm trying to find b, the letter b, which represents the y-intercept. Okay, so don't use any y value. The y-intercept is a specific y value that has an x of 0. So the x value, when the x value is 0, this is called the y-intercept. Okay, so we need to find that. So what you need to do is you need to pick one of the points. It doesn't matter which one. You need to just pick one of the points. So I'll go with that second point. And as you see, we have x value, we have y value, and we also figured out m. So you just need to plug those in. So I plugged in the y value, which we picked that point, so negative 3, equals, and I plugged in my m, which is the slope, 1, times x, which is 15, since I picked that point, plus b. So I have negative 3 equals 15 plus b, because 15 times 1 is 15. You subtract 15 from both sides, and you have negative 18. That's your b value. Now you need to write the equation, which they asked for. And we write it by just plugging in m and b. So by plugging in just m and b. So I'm back to x and y. Okay, so back to x and y, I plug in m and b. M is 1, and we know that 1 times x is still x. So I can write the 1, or I can keep it hidden. Either way is correct. And the b is negative 18. So all I did is I plugged in m and b. Okay, so don't forget to plug in m. M is 1. Okay, in that case, I can write 1 like that. Or I can just not write it because 1 times x is still x. And that's the equation. Now there's another way to do that, which I want to show you also. Now the other way is still using the slope. So I still have the slope, which I figured out, and we'll get the same exact answer but different steps. So instead of using y equals mx plus b, which we call it slope-intercept form, I can use another formula, another equation, and get the same answer. And that other equation, as we said in class, is point-slope form. And that is, so the other equation is point-slope form right here, and it's y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. And we're just going to plug in numbers here, here, and here. Okay, so as you see, we see y and x. They say y1 and x1. I can use y1 and x1 that I named, or I can also use point 2. It doesn't matter which point you use. It doesn't matter, as long as you put the y value where the y value is, the x value where the x value is. So it doesn't matter if you use point 1 or point 2. Okay, so we're going to plug in those things and see what we get. So I decided to use the same point that I circled, but it doesn't matter. You can use the other point as long as you plug y in the y value and x in the x value. And also you plug in the slope. Okay, don't forget. Now, what you need to do is you need to distribute that. And since it's 1, it should be easy. 1 times x is just x, and 1 times negative 15 is just negative 15. So we're going to write that. So now I have y plus 3 because 2 negatives, and I distributed the 1, I got x minus 15. Now if we subtract the 3 from both sides, so minus 3, that would also give me negative 18. We'll have that same exact equation that I figured out using the other method, which was slope-intercept. So I used slope-intercept at the beginning, and now I use point-slope. And they both give me the same equation. Okay, so sometimes I'll specify, use this method or this method, and sometimes you can use the one that you like better. Okay, let's look at number 2. So question 2 was the same heading. It had the same heading. So write an equation for the line that passes through, and I give you 1 point, and I give you more information about the line that I want you to create an equation for. So I give you more information to help you. So I said, okay, it passes through that point, and the line that you're going to do is parallel to that line over here. So if I graph this equation in red, I would get a line that's parallel to the line that I'm going to create and passes through this point. So we agreed parallel lines have the same slope. So really, I am giving you the slope, which is in that case is negative 1, because the slope is the coefficient of x. It's just the number next to x. So I really gave you the slope, but instead of telling you it passes through that point and the slope is negative 1, we need to know that parallel means parallel lines have the same slope. Okay, so you can use either method, same idea. I'll use the second method that I showed you to find an equation. So I'll use point slope form, which we just did, and I'm plugging in numbers in y1, m, and x1. Okay, so all those. So really, I don't have 2 points to choose from, I just have 1. So make sure the x value goes in the x value and the y value goes in the y value. So x comes first, y second. So I have y minus -4, because -4 is my y value over here, times m, which is -1, x minus the x value, which is 4. Okay, now we need to look at two negatives. They make a positive. So let's rewrite it and let's distribute that number over as we did in class. So I have y plus 4 equals -x plus 4. So if I want to subtract 4 from both sides to get the equation simplified, then I'll get y equals -x, because if I subtract 4, here would go away, would be 0, and here would go away, would be 0. So you can write y equals -x. You don't have to write plus 0, because adding or subtracting 0 doesn't count, doesn't matter. So I used this formula. You could have used y equals mx plus b, and you could have found b, and then you would have figured out that b is 0, so that when you rewrite the equation, you would get the same answer. Okay, let's look at the third problem. The third problem still had the same heading, write an equation for the line that passes through, and I gave you 1 point, and I didn't give you a second point. I gave you a definition of that line, a description for that line. So I said, okay, the line that you're trying to write an equation for is perpendicular to this line that has this equation. So again, all I'm doing is I'm giving you the slope, because we need to know that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So that means opposite sign and flip. So that means that slope over here, the coefficient of x, is 4 over 3. It's positive 4 over 3. So then my slope, since they said my line is perpendicular to, then my slope has a negative. It's the opposite to whatever line they give me, because they said perpendicular. So the lines are perpendicular, they have opposite reciprocal slope. Now reciprocal means you flip it. So instead of 4 over 3 becomes 3 over 4. Okay, so -3 over 4, because opposite and reciprocal. Opposite sign and flip. So now we can use either method to find an equation. So this time, just for a change, I'll use y equals mx plus b. I can use still the same method as I showed you in question 2, but I'll use a different method to show you. So in y equals mx plus b, the slope-intercept form, the y value is 0. M, which is the slope, we agreed our line is -3/4, because it's perpendicular to that line they gave me, and the x value is -4 plus b. Now whether you're doing y equals mx plus b or you're doing point slope form, either way is fine, but I noticed that most students got caught up on the multiplication. So notice that since we're multiplying fraction times a fraction, cross-canceling is allowed. Okay, so you can always say -3 times -4 is 12, and then say 4 times 1 is 4. So you can say 12 divided by 4, which you'll still get +3. Or you can cross-cancel, and also negative times a negative, you know it's a positive. So you have b plus 3 equals 0, and then by subtracting 3 from both sides, you get b equals -3. So now, if I want to write an equation by plugging in m and b, my equation will be y equals -3/4 x minus 3. So plug in the slope and plug in b, and that's it. So that's how we write equations. So check the next video for the last 2 questions of the warm-up. Thank you.